Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Toronto Maple Leafs fans, welcome back to Game Over. Happy Saturday. Celebrating a Leafs win against the Columbus Blue Jackets, shutting them out 5-0 on this wonderful Saturday night, 2 weeks before the playoffs start. Welcome to Game Over Toronto. My name is Lauren. If it is your first time here, if you could just go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button, it would mean a whole lot to me. So we're going to talk all about the game. We're going to break down the game in the first period. We're going to talk a little bit about how the Leafs have played in their last 6 games. And then we're going to talk about the playoffs. And then and how they're going to start 2 weeks from today. So let's jump right into it. Like I said, this is Game Over Toronto. If you're just joining us, thank you for being here. I really appreciate you being here on your Saturday night. Sorry, I have all kinds of text messages coming in over the phone. It's because everybody's excited about the win, obviously. That's definitely what those text messages are for. Yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about this big win for Toronto, splitting the season series against the Columbus Blue Jackets, getting one at home and then losing it obviously in Columbus earlier this season. The Leafs tonight, for the majority of the game, were not the better team. They, until the third period, were behind in the shot column. They were not making enough passes. They were not making enough really good reads. They were able to score in spite of that. So lots of really good things. Lots of really good things to talk about, despite the fact that, again, in the first 40 minutes, the Leafs were, for all intents and purposes, the second team, despite the fact, again, that they were in the winning in the only column that really ends up counting, which is the goal column. So let's talk about the game. Again, first period, there was a couple of really nice plays made by William Nylander. There was a really nice chance by Matthew Knies, who has been unbelievable down the stretch. He's been, just a revelation in terms of his capability on that top line. Back in obviously earlier this week, back on Wednesday, in that game against the Panthers, Jake McCabe and David Kampf both got hurt, so neither of those guys played tonight. Myers was penciled in on the defense, and then Nick Robertson, his first game after being scratched for 3. Myers not in since back almost at the beginning of March. He's been out 12 games in a row. So really good to see those guys get back in, get some game action, especially Myers. Obviously, Philippe Myers was doing really well earlier this season. But again, once we traded for Brandon Carlo, the need for him to be in the Leafs' top 6 defensemen wasn't there. Obviously, with McCabe being out, who is such an important player for the Leafs on defense, Myers gets to come in. He had a fine night. There was no egregious play that he made that drew attention to himself, and that's the best thing that you can do really as a defenseman. There is still apparently a rumor that Jani Hakanpää and Max Pacioretty's return is on the horizon. But at this point, it would be tough for me to bring either of those guys back in. I think Jani Hakanpää played a total of maybe 2 games for the Leafs so far this year, and then went off and was injured again. So, it was good to see Nicky Bobby get back in. We all know it is. If you're here and you're watching this, you either love to torment me, or you know the fact that Nick Robertson, when he does get scratched in the first game that he has after coming back into the lineup, he's basically guaranteed a goal. He not only did that tonight, he actually doubled down and got a second one as well, starting off the Leafs with 9:57 to go in the first period. Just a really nice shot, low glove side, on a very, very nice read from Pontus Holmberg. That fourth line tonight was looking pretty good. Obviously, Pontus Holmberg, he's usually the place where offense goes to die. So it was very nice to see him produce a little bit, him get an assist on that. Nick Robertson, again, we know that if after he's been scratched, when he comes back, he is going to play this style of this kind of game with this much tenacity, with this much gumption, with this much doggedness. So was not overly surprised that he put the Leafs on the board first. Not long after that, Lawton took a cross-checking penalty. It got killed off. There was only 3 shots, and then they go in, and before the end of the first period, Matthew Nyes tries in Michigan. He gets pretty close, closer than any other Leaf has so far this season. But we go into the first intermission up 1-0. Shots were 14-8 for Columbus. That first period, there were a couple of nice plays that the Leafs were making, but for the most part, they were losing every battle. They were getting to the puck second every time. They were losing all the board battles. They were doing all kinds of stuff. That was not good. That was not good enough. Making poor reads, making poor plays. Again, just kind of getting outworked along the boards in every battle. Columbus was really able to get sustained zone pressure multiple times in that first period and even into the second period. Matthew Nyes got a really nice breakaway. He wasn't able to get it under Merzlikins' pads. There was a really nice play that Benoit had against Adam Fantilli, who, when we played them earlier this year, I think Adam Fantilli got a hat trick, which, of course. So Benoit actually, I think, had a very good night tonight. I think he actually ended up getting in a fight as well. So the Lorentz and Corrali fight happened just after that. Austin Matthews got a chance 7:15 in, and then Nick Robertson goes 5-hole to add an insurance marker for the Maple Leafs, putting them up 2-0 with 7:32 to go on a really nice pass from Domi, who just looks so happy for Nick Robertson. Matthew Nyes had a really nice backhander they weren't able to bury, but again, even in that period, for the most part, the Leafs were losing a lot of the puck battles, a lot of the board battles, a lot of the things that normally they need to get and secure a win was not going, but that doesn't end up mattering because they end up scoring more. So Nick Robertson ends up getting, obviously, the game-winning goal. They end up with a shutout. And then moving into the second period, there was a really nice chance that Bobby McMahon and Morgan Rielly had. Morgan Rielly has looked pretty good so far, leading up to the playoffs the last few games, despite the fact that he hasn't been as producing as much as we normally expect him to. Yeah, third period opens up, and a minute and 11 seconds in, William Nylander starts his own tally and rally, putting the Leafs up 3-0 on a really, really, really nice rebound from a Morgan Rielly shot. That's a good read. If you want to make plays and if you want to score goals, you got to go to the net. William Nylander making a really nice play to be in the right position at the right time to be able to bury that rebound. Gets his 43rd, continuing his pursuit of being second in the NHL, I think only behind Leon Draisaitl. The third line tonight actually looked really good despite the fact that they didn't actually score. That combination of Yarncroke and Lawton and Domi is actually, I really like it. The more time that's going on, even though they haven't been able to produce a lot of offense, they are a hard line to play against, and I think that the more that they play together, they're going to continue to build that chemistry, which is a good thing for us. There was the Nyes and Fabro roughing exchange. The 4-on-4 happened. They weren't able to do anything, and then William Nylander again gets on the ice, gains the zone, and then he skates right into the middle of the slot, and just a really nice shot on a very nice pass from Morgan Rielly and Austin Matthews. 4:21 in, yet literally getting 2 goals in the first 5 minutes of the third period is a pretty good way. From the beginning of the third period, the Leafs really did a much better job of making better reads, making smarter passes, not losing all of those battles that they were so much earlier in the game, and as a result of that, they start really just turning the whole rink into essentially a shooting gallery. They were much better. That's my biggest note, is that they were playing much better in the third period. And then Austin Matthews, 3:32 to go on a deleted penalty. Again, really nice play from Marner and Nyes. And Stoli gets his second shutout of the season, 10th of his career, saving 27 of 27. Boy, I wish the Leafs would have played against Columbus like that a few years ago in the play-in round. Wouldn't that have been nice? So that's the sort of the long and short of the game. Again, for the first 40 minutes, the Leafs were playing like the second best team, but again, it's not the shots and the blocks and the passes that count. It is the score. So they win one that maybe they don't. Again, if Nick Robertson isn't in and they go into the third period still tied 0-0, maybe they don't have as much oomph. Maybe they don't wake up the way that they do. Anthony Stolarz, especially in that first period, Columbus basically had their way with the Leafs. They ended up getting like 14 shots. And Stoli, right from the beginning, was making some really big saves. Very good, timely saves. CJ in the chat, Florida tanking to get Toronto. It's not impossible. I think they actually lost to Montreal earlier tonight. not Montreal. They lost to, who did they lose to, CJ? I know that Florida has been on a multi-game losing streak, as has the Boston Bruins. That fall from grace has been just wonderful to watch. I don't think any of us were expecting the Bruins to fall as far as they did. So far this season, it has been rough. So let's actually, we're going to try and keep this show nice and short tonight. So let's actually move over into the second period and talk about the fact that the Leafs did win tonight, and their last 6 games, they have been playing pretty well. Obviously, they have that really bad loss against Nashville, and then they do end up losing to the Sharks in the shootout. But in their last 6 wins, last 6 games, not including tonight, they have beat the Panthers, the Ducks, the Kings, the Flyers, and had 23 goals in the 6 games, not including those losses, and then an extra 5 goals tonight. So 28 goals in the last 7 games. That's pretty good. You're averaging, 3 to 4 goals a night, and in the playoffs, they won't be able to produce at that same speed. But the good thing is right now, it's not just the top line that's scoring. It seems like a lot of the lines, obviously Nick Robertson is he's streaky as a bad dry erase marker, but maybe the solution is you scratch him before game 1 and then he comes back for game 1 and then he lights it up and gets confidence, and then you scratch him for game 2 and he's back game 3, etc., because it seems like the only way. Oh yes, the Sens beat them, which is funny. Yeah, it's the playoff race right now is becoming almost a little bit. It's closer than I thought it would be at this point into the season, and this close to being the end of the season and into the playoffs. It'll be interesting. Like I said, the playoffs start 2 weeks tonight. The Leafs have 6 games to go. They still have 2 back-to-backs, which somehow seems impossible, doesn't it? And so just looking at the standings really quickly, let me just pull Sportsnet up right here. Here's the standings. So, yeah, the Leafs up. We have 98 points. The Lightning just behind us at 94. The Panthers 92. And the Leafs' next 2 games are down in Florida against Florida and Tampa. So, obviously, if we can go in and win both of those, then we put ourselves in a very, 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 very good position to actually win the Atlantic. Currently, looking at the standings, it looks like there is a really good chance that whoever wins in the wild card spot, that the Leafs are going to face them. I would be lying if I said I was a little bit worried about playing either the Sens or Florida. The fact of the matter is, yes, Florida's a really good team. They are on a bad losing streak. They are down a few of their main staple players. And the Leafs did beat them last week. They are playing them this week. There is a chance that the Leafs will go into the playoffs if they do face Florida, having won the last 2 games against them. However, if that does not happen and they end up facing the Senators, the bad news is we got totally swept in the season series against the Sens this year. And I do not want Austin Matthews to have to go toe-to-toe against Brady Tkachuk, because Brady Tkachuk is not a fun player to play against. And he is somebody that is able to score. He obviously is the captain of the Sens, but he will hurt people. Now, the same could be said against Florida, but just in terms of numbers, statistics, so far this year, the Leafs have been a much better team playing against Sergei Bobrovsky and the Florida Panthers than they have been against the Ottawa Senators, which just seems backwards. I mean, when I was growing up, I remember the Battle of Ontario was a war of attrition. You had Danny Heatley and you had Jason Spezza and all these killers, and it was such a good battle. And I do think that, historically, we know that when the Leafs have faced the Sens in the playoffs, the Leafs have beaten the Sens every single time, which is great. But this is not that team. These are not those players. The Leafs, whoever they go up against this year, I do think that this year more than any other, and we say this every year on Game Over, this year more than any other year, it really feels like this. If this goes well, then maybe you can bring back some other players, or players that are looking down the barrel of free agency. or restricted free agency. There's a number of players on the Leafs that are looking forward to that. Obviously, John Tavares' contract is up July 1st. Mitch Marner's contract is up July 1st. Matthew Knies and Nick Robertson both Nick Robertson signed a contract extension at the end of last year for a 1-year contract. He was still an RFA, so the Leafs still control his rights. Nick Robertson obviously playing very well tonight, getting himself past his previous season record of 14 goals. It'll be interesting to see if he can, continue to score. But obviously the priority for me, if I'm being totally honest, is re-signing Matthew Knies is my first priority. I think John Tavares is sort of a what's the term I'm looking for? John Tavares is basically a lock to be back as a Maple Leaf next year. I think that it will, I think it will come down to the dollars. I don't think it's a question of will he be back. Obviously, the biggest wild card in that and the biggest variable is Mitch Marner. But that's looking too far forward. Right now, we need to think about what is going to happen in the next 6 games and what is going to happen moving into the first round of the playoffs. Because if I'm just looking at the schedule here really quick, the Leafs actually end up finishing the schedule playing a number of teams in the Atlantic, whether they're in a playoff position or not. The last 6 games of the season, we have the Panthers this Tuesday, the Lightning on Wednesday, so that's the first back-to-back. And then Saturday, Sunday, we have another back-to-back next weekend with the Canadiens and Hurricanes, and then finishing off the season against the Sabres and the Red Wings. It will be interesting to see how those things go. Obviously, currently the Red Wings they're not eliminated, but they're hanging on by the knee hair of a bee. They're very close to being eliminated. The Sabres were eliminated, essentially a couple of weeks ago. But the Leafs always play down to their opponent. Tonight was maybe an exception. If we look at where Columbus is in the standings, yeah. Columbus is at 77 points. The Leafs have a total of 21 points now of difference between them and Columbus, but played very well against them tonight. Again, normally, so far this season and in seasons past, the Leafs have a tendency to play down to their opponent. So I was sort of expecting coming in tonight to have the Leafs not play as well as they are expected to against a team that they should beat. And so I couldn't be more tickled pink that they were actually able to put a little bit more distance between us and Tampa. Again, getting a shutout for Stoli, I think that kind of cements him maybe even a little bit more as to where the management group is leaning of who's going to be the starter in the playoffs. It will be very interesting to see what happens this week. Again, they have a back-to-back Wednesday, Thursday again this week against Tampa and Florida, so that will be interesting. Tuesday, Wednesday, not Wednesday, Thursday, my mistake. So that will be interesting to see how they distribute the goalies for this upcoming week. Obviously, Tampa is right there. It would be very, very interesting to see if that's who starts, if Stoli starts against Tampa and maybe Joseph Woll starts against Florida. Those are maybe the 2 most important games of the Leafs season at this point. Because if you lose both of those games, then both of those teams are breathing down your neck. And if you win both of them, then you put yourself into quick set cement. And there's a really good chance that the Leafs could actually, pull this one out and actually win the Atlantic, which wouldn't that be a nice thing to have? The Leafs haven't really had home ice advantage or even taken advantage of it when they have. And so, every little bit counts. The Leafs this year have been a much better team at home. Last year, they were one of the worst in the league at home. So some of those little things, going the right way when they need to be. Obviously, we have, knock on wood here, 2 healthy goaltenders. For the most part, the main players have been more or less healthy all season. Obviously, Austin Matthews has had injuries up and down. But even him, he's now scored 30 goals in all 9 career seasons with the Maple Leafs. So it was very nice to see him get one tonight. He's sort of been struggling, even though he's still been contributing, has still been, getting assists here and there, etc. But obviously just not having that same jump. So it'll be really interesting to see if they're able to get him going maybe just a teensy bit more and get him just a little bit more space over into the playoffs. So before I move over into the third period, like I said, we're going to try and keep tonight's show a little bit shorter, just because I am kind of by myself, and it is more difficult to do a show by yourself. There's not nearly as much banter because obviously if you're talking to me, I can't hear you, unfortunately. But before we move over into the third period, if you are watching, if you could just hit like and subscribe, that would mean a whole lot to us. If you could actually go over to thegameovernetwork.com, or if you are on any of the social medias, the Game Over Network is all on there. All of those links are down in the description below. If you like this kind of media, if you love the show, if you like being part of the community that we have worked so hard to establish, there are all kinds of resources over on the Game Over website. You can get links to all the other shows that we have. We have Hyperdrive Hockey. We obviously have all of the Game Over Network shows in all of the other areas of Canada. So we have Montreal, we have Ottawa, Winnipeg, Calgary, Edmonton, and Vancouver. Now, obviously, only a few of those are going to go into the playoffs, but there is a really good chance that in 2 weeks, there will still be 5 of the 7 Canadian Game Over shows still going, because Edmonton is getting into the playoffs, Toronto is already in, Winnipeg is in, and Montreal and the Sens are making one heck of a push to each try and carve themselves out a spot to play hockey into May. Obviously, the last time the Habs were in the playoffs, they went all the way to the Cup final before getting absolutely trucked by the Vegas Golden Knights. So it'll be interesting to see if the Habs are able to get that same kind of success in the playoffs. Obviously, they have some different people, but they did not have Lane Hudson last time, and he is, currently the top contender to win the Calder. So it will be interesting regardless to see how everything plays out in the next 2 weeks. And it's so exciting. It's so much better to have this kind of hockey, and hockey that's meaningful all the way into April. In years past, everything was kind of decided basically as of Christmas. There was very little to no movement after January 1st in most of the previous years. So for the Leafs to actually be playing meaningful hockey, I think it's keeping them a little bit more engaged. They don't seem to be, sort of puttering and sputtering into the playoffs like they have in years previous. So very, 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 very nice to see. So let's actually move over into our third period. Like I said, everybody, if you could just hit like, hit subscribe. If you have any questions, if you have anything you want to talk about in overtime, I am going to briefly talk about Ovi tying Gretzky's record tomorrow. Oh, let's leave that for overtime. Let's move into the third period. So the playoffs start 2 weeks today. It will be interesting to see how everybody is distributed. Like I said, and have sort of been saying the whole show, I think it's still a little bit up in the air who starts game 1. But the more time is going on and the better he's playing down the stretch, I think Anthony Stolarz is really making himself a good case to be the starter for Toronto going into game 1. Now, he has not actually played a single game in the playoffs. Not one. He has been to the playoffs with the Florida Panthers, but it was as the backup. He didn't play at any point. And the only games that Joseph Woll has played has been in relief of somebody that either got hurt or was just atrocious. So I would not be surprised if that's how they go into it, just trying to give Stoley you give Stoley the pilot's chair, and then you have Woll as the co-pilot, and if Stoley ends up not doing well in game 1, then you put Joseph Woll in a position that he's already comfortable in, where he's coming in as the goalie that started as the backup and becomes the starter. On top of that, it'll be really interesting to see how the bottom lines end up actually working out. Obviously, right now, there's a little bit of a revolving door on that fourth line of the players that are in and out. David Kampf getting hurt is obviously a little bit... It hurts us more than I think most people think. But Nick Robertson coming in, feeling good, going into the playoffs is important. He's had a couple big moments in the playoffs in years previous, maybe not as many as, say John Tavares or Matthew Nyes, but when it comes to the playoffs, you need everybody. You need scoring from everybody. So it will be very interesting to see. Not only that, but how, the the defense pairings have been basically cemented ever since Brandon Carlo came in. Carlo and Morgan Riley are, the more time goes on, the more they're playing really well. I think that is pretty clear that fit is, one of the best that we've seen with Mo and Carlo. They played really well tonight. And Tanev tonight, actually, I think as of tonight, he actually has the title of the most blocks as a Leaf, which is silly because he's been here for a year in a season. He had a couple unbelievable plays tonight too. He's going into the playoffs nice and healthy. OEL almost got hurt a couple nights ago, managed to come back. He looked really good tonight. He made a very, very, very nice play on one of the drives from one of the Blue Jackets that was cutting into the middle. He really just got himself on the inside and stopped all of it. All of the things that we need clicking right now are clicking. Again, there's still 6 games to go. Anything can happen. Obviously, the Leafs are a lock to make the playoffs, but it's crazy. It's crazy that it's coming this close, that the entire division is this close, and that, games 77 and 78 will be the most important for the Leafs because of the teams that they're playing against. It's almost like whoever designed the schedule knew that the Leafs were going to be fighting for the top on the Atlantic, and putting these games so close to the playoffs with possible playoff opponents, it makes for good hockey. It makes sure that people are watching all the way down the stretch. So really interesting to see how that's going to all pan out in a couple of weeks here. The more time's going on, the fewer questions I have. Obviously, players like Pontus Holmberg, I'm still a little bit wondering what you do here. But Bobby McMahon has been playing really well. He got some really good chances tonight. That top line with Matthew Nyes, Mitch Marner, and Austin Matthews, despite the fact that Matthews hasn't been scoring as much, still has been producing because of the other people that have been on that line. That second line of McMahon, Tavares, and William Nylander has just been electric. William Nylander being, the top goal scorer for the Leafs it's a good thing for him. It's a good thing for us. It's a good thing for the city. It's a good thing for everybody. So we know that come the playoffs, William Nylander has been historically the most prolific producer of points for the Maple Leafs. So I have every expectation and every belief that is going to continue. It does not look like he is being plagued by the same issues that he was having with his head last year. Down the stretch last year, there was a number of games that he missed. At the end of March into April, there were questions about his health. Obviously, he missed a number of games in the playoffs, and that was devastating for the Leafs offense. And again, knock on wood, so far this year, that has not been the case. So it feels like everything is coming up Millhouse. CJ down to the chat, at least Austin Matthews hit 30. Yeah, absolutely, man. It's obviously a far cry from where he was this time last year, where he was chasing 70 goals and he couldn't stop scoring. They actually said on the broadcast tonight that if he keeps scoring at the rate that he is, that there's a chance that he could actually, get up into the 890s in terms of goals. But I think that so much of that depends on the severity of this injury and if it's going to plague him for the rest of his career. Hopefully not. Obviously, however far the Leafs go into the playoffs, I would assume that he is going to spend a considerable amount of his summer over in Germany with that doctor that he spent time with earlier this year in December. Cage Dancer down in the chat, that Austin Matthews roof goal was so sexy. Yes, it was. On that delayed penalty, just a really, really, really nice play. It was very nice to see him get one from that spot on the ice. He's done a lot of scoring from there so far this season. I actually at first wasn't even sure it went in because of how quickly it was in and out. But really happy to see that he was able to get that. And again, get himself feeling a little bit good going into the playoffs. Because again, he didn't score the other day, earlier this week. I'm just looking at the scores from a couple weeks ago. Even against Philly, like a couple weeks ago on the 25th, he did in the 7-2 win. Matthews didn't score. Wow. It feels weird not talking about Matthews scoring as much. Like, I think up until, like, the first period, the end of the first period, he only had, 20 seconds of puck possession time. He didn't have a great game, but he managed to score, so that's what matters, right? So, let's move over into the overtime. We're doing really well with time here, everybody. We're just at 30 minutes. Let's freaking go into overtime. If you have any questions, please put them down in the chat. Before we do anything, we need to talk about the biggest story in hockey right now. A story that when I was a kid, I didn't think would ever be something that I would ever talk about, because this was not on my radar to do a podcast. But I remember watching Gretzky's last game. It's one of the few memories I have watching hockey with my dad. I remember watching him skate around in that Rangers jersey and thinking, oh my gosh, that jersey looks so big on him. And looking at the numbers that he was able to produce over his career, not just the goals, but the assists, obviously, is an even more impressive feat. And, Wayne Gretzky had a record that we all thought, for all intents and purposes, would probably last for decades more. But the great eight, Alex Ovechkin, yesterday against the Chicago Blackhawks, scoring 2 goals and tying Gretzky's record of 894 goals in one less game. Now, if you want to have fun, go and look at Gretzky's points total, and you will discover the fact that Alex Ovechkin is about 1,200 points behind Wayne Gretzky overall. But that does not take away the fact that this accomplishment, when he does it, and there's a very good chance that this time tomorrow, that record will be obsolete. Because tomorrow, the Washington Capitals are going to be playing against the New York Islanders. And that is actually, if I remember correctly, that is actually the team that Wayne Gretzky scored his 894th goal against. If that happens tomorrow, if that is how the tea leaves fall, I mean, how can you not be romantic about hockey? To beat the record of the great one in the exact same amount of games, just by 1 goal, is an unbelievable feat. Even if he doesn't do it tomorrow, he'll do it by the end of the season for sure. And he will have done something that we all thought at some point in our lives we would never see again. There's a Spencer Carberry, who, obviously former coach of the Maple Leafs, assistant coach for the Maple Leafs, suggesting that Alex Ovechkin go on the ice to try and get the empty netter, and Alex Ovechkin waving him off because he doesn't want to break the record that way. It's just perfect. It's going to be such an exciting game to watch. And it will be an unbelievable moment when it happens. Obviously, Gretz was there last night. They had a wonderful picture, the two of them together holding the 894 puck. And just an unbelievable feat. And one that I truly and honestly did not know I would ever see broken in my lifetime. But Ovi coming in and reminding all of us about the fact that there are more than just one country in the northern hemisphere that is able to produce some unbelievable hockey players in Alex Ovechkin. The fact that this might be the last game over before that record is broken it's crazy to think about. What an exciting thing to see. What an exciting thing to be a part of. Last night when he ended up scoring 894, the entire bench emptied for the Capitals. The entire team shook his hand afterwards, although Connor Bedard looked like he would rather lick a toilet seat than be there. But to tie the record against an original 6 team, it's a pretty good way to go. And there's a really good chance that this time tomorrow, Alex Ovechkin will stand alone on the mountaintop of greatest goal scorers in the NHL. So there's not really any questions down in the chat, so I'm actually going to wrap this stream up. If you could actually hit like and hit subscribe, if you could hit the bell so that you always know when we go live, that would mean a lot to us. Like I said, please go onto the GameOverNetwork.com or on any social media, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Blue Sky, on TikTok. We have all of those Game Over Network channels existing, and it would go a long way to make this channel a better thing, and more popular. And I appreciate you being here with us. I appreciate you listening. I appreciate you watching. The Leafs, like I said, will play against Tampa and Florida this Tuesday and Wednesday. Dominic is now on vacation until April 22nd, so up until essentially Game 3 of the playoffs, it'll be back and forth between Zach and I. We're going to do a couple shows together and a couple shows apart, and then we will be back here in 2 weeks talking about, hopefully, a Leafs game one win. There we go. And who against whoever they play, because right now it's a coin flip. And if the Leafs lose on Tuesday and Wednesday, then it becomes a dice roll, and it could be almost anybody. So thank you for watching Game Over. Like I said, my name is Lauren. You can find me on Blue Sky at Lauren and the Six. If you could just hit like, hit subscribe. I know I've said it 5 times, but it would go a long way. Check over the GameOverNetwork.com. Check out our other shows, because I tell you, Winnipeg is getting excited. Edmonton is full of dread, and Montreal and Ottawa are absolutely jacked for how well their teams are doing. So go check out those shows, and we will see you on Tuesday. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Have a great night. Thank you for being here.